Hey guys, I wanted to hop on a video today and talk to you about the recent changes that have happened this week. This like blanket nerf over every single class, and kind of slowing down the damage of arena in general, and also helping people survive, and kind of what that means for the meta, what that means for people like trying to play arena, like what classes, what comps you should look at, and stuff like that. I want to go over some stuff and give my opinion on this. So, but before we get into that, I do want to at least read out the changes for everyone that doesn't know. Just a few days ago, this change right here was implemented in PvP in general. Okay, so you're looking at stamina was increased by 10% for all specs, blanket. And then also the primary stat. So like, oh, for people who don't know what stamina basically is like your health pool. So you have 10% more health in arena. Every class does. Every single spec, every class has 10% more health in arena. And you're also seeing this primary stat, strength, agility, and intellect being decreased for all healing and non-healing specs. So that means damage was reduced and health was increased, okay? And this means that it's harder to kill people. And the reason like why this change even came about is because a lot of the top players, especially, and PvP community in general, have been outcrying to the developers over the last few months that damage was too high in arena and that healing cannot keep up with the amount of damage being put out. Okay, so you're seeing more health come out, you're seeing less damage from this change, and that is really, you know, targeting at the mindset and the way that Legion has developed is that pretty much every class that does a crazy amount of damage is being taken over other classes. So with like Demon Hunter now is in a place where it doesn't do as much damage as Feral Druid or as Assassination Rogue or as Arms Warrior, you know, and whenever you're playing similar classes, if one does an exponential amount of damage compared to the class who does like a decent amount of damage and pretty much supplies like the same thing, you're going to choose the one that does the most damage. And that's basically the story of Legion. Legion PvP has been really catered towards which class is strong right now, and since you have to invest into that class for so long, you can't just change classes over and over and play whichever is strongest, because you can't keep up with the artifact power, you can't keep up with the gearing, you just can't keep up with somebody who's put hours and hours and hours into their Arms Warrior, Feral Druid, or you know, whatever. So this is kind of playing to the fact that you don't have to change every single class up to find which one's the most damage. There obviously will be classes that are always better than others. That's just how video games are in general. But this is kind of helping that, okay? Now, I want to speak directly to the specifics. So like stamina being increased by 10% for all specs. I've been playing around 23 to 2400 MMR, which is like near Gladiator right now, or if not Gladiator. And with that being said, like the comps that I've been fighting, I think that a lot of classes have a lot, like too much health, honestly. Like with Death Knights, for example. Like Death Knights in Arena have 3.8 million health. Like that's a lot because they have a talent already increases their health by 10%. So like you know, creating a 10% buff on their base stats and then taking that reinforced health and giving them, you know, even more health on top of that, like that's a lot of health to be able to grind through, especially with a 5% damage nerf, right? So I think that you're seeing a lot of classes maybe getting a little bit too much health. But when you're seeing like Subtlety Rogues, when they're playing with Thief's Bargain, and they're not unplayable now because, well, they weren't unplayable before, but like when they had 1.9 million health in Arena, and now they have 2.3 or 2.4 million health, like that's really beneficial. So like that's an awesome change. I see Subtlety Rogues being a lot happier with their class because of that. But when you see Restoration Druids with 4 million health in bear form being almost unkillable because of how much health they have, that might be a little overtuned. And I would like to see the Blizzard developers look to that and hopefully tune back a couple classes that have just an enormous amount of health in Arena. And then also I want to talk about the damage, because when you look at comps that are like dampening comps. Okay, so for example, if you don't know what a dampening comp is basically a comp that's really good at surviving against an enemy team, but also does a lot of AoE pressure. So like Affliction Warlock Elemental Shaman, kind of, or like Moonkin Elemental Shaman. They're really good at off-healing each other, surviving, low defensive cooldown like timers, so that they can get their defensive cooldowns out often. And they also put out a really huge amount of AoE pressure. So how this works is basically they will survive until a dampening dampening comes into effect, and dampening is like as the arena game goes on longer and longer, the healing becomes less and less effective, and that's just like that's called dampening. That's just what the game has in it currently in order to make it so that games will eventually finish themselves, because healing will become less and less relevant. So when you fight against a dampening comp who caters towards surviving until dampening is in effect and then doing a huge amount of AoE pressure to where healers cannot keep up, the problem is that those dampening comps would be able to do that insane amount of damage without dampening even being in effect. So you would see classes doing 250,000 DPS on 3 different targets, and just doing an insane amount of AoE pressure to where healers could not keep up. And this was a huge issue, right? This was an entirely huge issue, because if you play a comp that does a huge amount of damage and it wins before dampening is in effect, then you don't give any room for players like RMP or RMD who rely solely on CCing 2 targets and killing 1 target, where their comp is different. They're not about like having to survive. They're about CCing multiple targets at once, being very coordinated with their interrupts and their stuns and their polymorphs and cyclones, and then killing that 1 target when you have an opportune window to do so. So, it's really like thriving over those types of setup comps, where damage is the only relevant factor. And this change is playing towards that. I know I'm speaking from a really high level. I hope you guys are keeping up with me in this, because this, in my opinion, is an overall step in the right direction. It kind of shows that like Blizzard's really trying, because you've seen 3 different tuning phases in the last week. I love that Blizzard's trying. I really do. The only 2 wishes I had is that they would kind of slow down and do these 5%, 10% buffs and nerfs for everything, instead of buffing something by 800% and nerfing another class by 80%. Like that's crazy, because you ruin people's gameplay. Like I can't play my Demon Hunter anymore because it's been nerfed in like 6 different ways, right? So it's like I can't even like compete with a Feral Druid, right? I did less damage than the Guardian Druid before it was nerfed. It's just like it doesn't seem very viable from an investment standpoint to invest into a character that can't even do well in Arena, that doesn't serve any purpose or can't do enough damage to keep up with other classes. So, speaking back, I do wish that Blizzard would kind of slow down with their stuff, with their changes, and I do wish that Blizzard would hop on a video every week and just explain what their thoughts are behind their own changes. Like that would be so amazing. I mean, Jeff Kaplan does that for Overwatch, Riot does it for League of Legends. You're seeing like Hearthstone can do it every now and then. Like there's a lot of different ways that they communicate to their audience, and I would love to see World of Warcraft developers do the same thing. So maybe they'll do that in the future. Who knows? I don't know. But regardless, guys, this is healthy for the spec, or healthy for the game. I think that this allows for more variety. Those setup comps can actually do stuff against other teams. They can survive long enough in order to do so with this stamina buff. I think some classes and some specs kind of thrive and benefit from this stamina buff a little bit more than others. But that's okay. I think that whether or not that's fixed or not, it's not a huge deal, but it's just my feedback on the change itself. That does sum it up for me today, guys. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to give a big, leave a comment down below. What do you think about this change? Because this kind of change doesn't go in the game very often. This 10% overall buff and 5% overall nerf for every class. This doesn't happen very often. So let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, and if you like me reporting these changes and giving my thoughts on them as we go. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to keep up to date with these videos, and also watch them on pretty much a daily basis. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you all in the next one. Yeah, see you tomorrow.